I host 3 separate channels on YouTube: ComicSins, A Comic a Day, and this channel where I cover first issues, my rants, whatever else crosses my mind, and my top 5-ish. You know, what you're watching now. Okay, I honestly have no good segue into this list. I watch and listen to a ton of YouTube right now, especially while I edit, and there's a lot of comic related vids I do watch. And this is my top 5-ish comic book reviewers I watch. As always, these are my personal favorites, so if you dislike any of them, I totally understand, but you know, my list. This is also not an actual rankings list, because honestly, they're all so amazing and awesome that I couldn't possibly put them on a list that wouldn't make me feel like I'm lessening how amazing they are. So with all that said, let's hop right in. Number 5. Comicstorian. Why do I always feel like my number 5 slot is the one that everyone is gonna call me out for, having it so low on the list? Comicstorian is a fantastic channel with some fundamental shows to really showcase great moments in comics. Be it their storyline breakdown with complete story, Know Your Universe, or even their relatively new Comicstorian. I think the biggest reason I really dig them is that 3 years ago, when I started making videos, yes, that was an uncomfortable many channels and shows attempts ago, roughly around the same time, and when I crashed and burned fairly hard on binging on comics, the first issue's mega show run, and many other things, they flourished to become a staple show for anyone new to comics, or even for clarification on some kind of confusing storylines. While it does tell the story outright, there's not a lot of editorializing in it that really keeps it a great listen when you need to hear the awesome. Best example of what I mean would probably be their complete story on Civil War, which I linked down in the description. Number 4. ComicsExplained. ComicsExplained is sort of the other side of the coin to Comicstorian. If Comicstorian presents the story in a clear, perfect way to tell it as a story, ComicsExplained, well, explains the story out. It becomes not necessarily about saying, here's what happened in this volume, but about explaining it all out in almost a discussion sort of way. Rather than just going, so here's what happened when Anti-Venom and Punisher team up, he talks not just about what sets it up, but about the meta around it. Maybe it's because I try having a similar style to my binging on comics or most videos I do. I actually got asked a couple weeks ago if I was him or an offshoot of his, which actually kind of made me smirk because it was kind of a badge of honor. Granted, I've also been asked if I was SF Debris or Boogie, so take that as you will. And I'll be honest, he's probably the most recent of my favorites, which is sad because he's hovering around nearly 900k subscribers right now, so I'm an idiot for not knowing about him sooner. Anyways, the best example I could probably give for him would be the fantastic, if not a little long, video on DC's Crisis on Infinite Earth, which is linked below. Number 3. Comic Showcase. I'm probably going to get a little bit of flack for this because he is a very good friend of mine, but he's a go-to channel for me, and this is also where we get into the more talking heads section of my list. He goes in depth with the issues he covers, while also infusing humor into it. It's a style that I've always been a fan of, and as a person, he's also pretty awesome, so that does lend me to enjoy his videos even more. The best example of his work would probably be his Steve Rogers Captain America #1 review, where he does explain most of the comic as well as goes into his personal views on the big controversy surrounding it. That would be linked below. But he's also the creator of the fantastic Starbolt webcomic that I did do a webcomic first on a while ago, which is also going to be linked below if you want to check that out and give him some deserved praise. Number 2. Comic You Know / ComicFrontline. Originally, I was just going to make this spot for Comic You Know because, as a whole, she tends to have the same opinion on comics as me, so I typically mark her as the nice way to phrase my own opinion when I do something like Black or Death of X. She's a righteous gal who's got a slew of comic and nerd stuff, but I felt like if I just narrowed it down to her, I would almost be steering anyone who hasn't heard of her away from the wholesale awesome that is the ComicFrontline podcast and network of people, like Brant Fowler, Comic Book Theater, and Spider Slayer, just to name a couple. The main podcast they do is awesome, and it's a go-to for when I'm editing. In fact, I'm probably listening to it right now while I'm editing up this video. Plus, something that's not YouTube related, Comic You Know has a comic out right now on Kickstarter and Comixology and wherever else that I have done a first issues on, but it's something that everyone should go and check out. Be it my review to see if you'd want to buy it, or just buy it outright. It's worth the read and something I've always enjoyed checking out when I can. Links in the description to Comic You Know's big show on ComicFrontline, her main channel, and my first issues on Like Father Like Daughter in the description below. Number 1. The Last Angry Geek. When I made this list, there was honestly only one channel that I knew had to be number one, because of course for my number one slot I need to fanboy far more than the logical guy I've been trying to be through the rest of this video. The Last Angry Geek is a must watch for comic fans. His show Comic Book Issues is hilarious, informative, and really lets the comics stand on their own rather than wanting to push his own viewpoint or strictly trying to go for humor. One More Day, however, will forever be a haunting thing for most comic readers, and while I can say that everyone on this list can get me to see issues and comics differently, the phenomenal Last Angry Geek is the one online personality that I not only look up to with sheer wonder and awe, but he is honestly someone that I would say is the most underrated YouTuber ever. Not only does he do the wonderful comic book issue show, but he's also brought the humor and insight into his You Know Who show that you just need to check out if you're a fan of Doctor Who. And Geek Riffs. Oh my god, if you're a fan of riff tracks, Geek Riffs will make you laugh out loud. He's brilliant and awesome and just a righteous dude. Links to his channel as a whole in the description below. And that's my list of the top 5 comic related YouTubers that I watch. Do I watch more? Yes, I do, but these I would say are the ones that you'd be shortchanged not to be following on a regular basis. If you have your own suggestion for comic YouTubers I should be watching, or want to agree on how awesome these people are, or disagree, leave a comment below. Like the Archivist on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and pledge to us on Patreon, where there is a ton of exclusive and offers for patrons. Also check out my other channels, ComicSins, which is a little on hiatus right now until I get the views up, and A Comic a Day, where this month is all about the Dark Tower comics, and I have a special guest host. And as always, stay golden, Inklings.